Andy Collins stood at her kitchen counter, sorting through the afternoon mail like she did every day after work. Bills, advertisements, credit card offers, nothing unusual. She was tired from her 12-hour shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse practitioner, and all she wanted was to grab a quick dinner and maybe catch up on her favorite show. The last thing she expected was to find her entire life turned upside down by a single piece of mail. The envelope looked official. Heavy cream paper with elegant gold lettering that read Belmont Estate Weddings. Andy frowned. She wasn't getting married. She'd been single for 2 years after her last relationship ended badly. Her younger sister Courtney was engaged, but she'd been planning a small, simple ceremony. At least, that's what Courtney had told her. Andy tore open the envelope, expecting maybe an invitation or information packet. Instead, she found a detailed wedding contract. Her eyes scanned the first page casually until she reached the payment section. Her coffee mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. $95,000. The contract was for a full wedding package at one of the most expensive venues in the city. Ice sculptures, imported flowers, a 7-course plated dinner for 200 guests, premium bar service, a live orchestra, designer linens, and a cake that cost more than most people's cars. It was the kind of wedding that belonged in magazines, not in real life. But what made Andy's stomach drop wasn't the price. It was the signature at the bottom of the contract. Her signature. Except she had never seen this contract before in her life. She read the client information section 3 times before it sank in. The bride was listed as Courtney Collins Patterson. The person responsible for payment was listed as Andy Collins, along with her social security number, address, and phone number. Someone had forged her signature and committed her to paying for a wedding that cost more than she made in 2 years. Andy's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. There were vendor agreements for flowers, photography, catering, music, decorations, and even a horse-drawn carriage. Every single contract had her forged signature and her financial information. The deposits alone added up to over $30,000, and according to the payment schedule, the remaining balance was due in 2 weeks. Her phone rang, making her jump. The caller ID showed her mother's number. "Andy, honey, I hope you got the wedding information packet today," her mother said cheerfully. "Isn't it exciting? Courtney is going to have the most beautiful wedding. We've all been working so hard to make it perfect for her special day." "Mom," Andy said slowly, "I'm looking at a contract for $95,000 with my forged signature on it." There was a pause. "All that? Well, we knew you'd want to help your sister have the wedding of her dreams. You're always so generous with family. I never signed anything. This is identity theft." "Don't be dramatic, Andy. It's not theft when it's family. Besides, you make good money at the hospital, and Courtney deserves this after everything she's been through with the engagement. Robert's family is very wealthy, and we can't embarrass ourselves with a cheap wedding." Andy felt like she was in a dream. A nightmare. "Mom, I can't afford this. I have student loans, a mortgage, car payments. This would bankrupt me." "You'll figure it out. You always do. And think about how happy this will make Courtney. She's been planning this for months. We all have. You wouldn't want to ruin her big day, would you?" The casual way her mother spoke about financial fraud made Andy realize this wasn't a mistake or misunderstanding. This was intentional. They had planned to steal from her and expected her to go along with it. "Who forged my signature?" Andy asked. "Oh, I don't know about all that paperwork stuff. You know how these wedding planners work. Probably just needed some signatures to get things started. The important thing is that Courtney gets her dream wedding." Andy hung up without another word. She stared at the contract, her mind racing. Her sister had been talking about wedding plans for months, but she'd always made it sound like a small affair. "Just close family," Courtney had said. "Nothing fancy. Robert and I want to keep it simple." But this wasn't simple. This was a production worthy of a reality TV show. And somehow they expected Andy to pay for all of it. She called Courtney directly. "Andy, did you see the wedding details? Isn't it amazing? The venue is absolutely stunning, and the photographer won some big award last year. I can't wait for you to see the dress. Courtney, you forged my signature on a $95,000 contract." The enthusiasm in Courtney's voice dimmed. "Look, I know it seems like a lot, but you have to understand. Robert's family is really important in this city. His dad owns 3 restaurants and his mom is on the hospital board. They expect a certain level of presentation. And you know how mom gets about appearances. So you committed fraud. It's not fraud when it's family helping family. Besides, you don't have kids or a husband to spend money on. What else are you going to do with it? This is my one chance to have a perfect wedding, and you're the only one who can make it happen. Andy couldn't believe what she was hearing. I could go to prison for this debt. Do you understand that? When I can't pay, they can garnish my wages, put liens on my house, destroy my credit. You're being overdramatic. It's just money. You'll pay it off eventually. With what money? Do you have any idea what my actual expenses are? Well, maybe you could get a second job. Or ask for overtime at the hospital. Other people manage big expenses all the time. Andy ended the call and sat in her kitchen, surrounded by broken pieces of her coffee mug and her shattered sense of reality. Her family had committed a serious crime against her and genuinely seemed to believe she should be grateful for the opportunity to bankrupt herself for a party. She looked at the contract again, studying every detail. The wedding was scheduled for 6 weeks away. Deposits had been paid, but the bulk of the money was still owed. She had that long to figure out how to escape this trap her own family had set for her. But first she needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. Andy drove to her family's house the next morning, the wedding contract in a folder on her passenger seat. She'd barely slept, spending most of the night researching identity theft laws and calling the fraud hotlines for her credit cards. What she'd learned made her sick to her stomach. Her family had been busy. 3 new credit cards had been opened in her name over the past 4 months. Her existing cards had charges she didn't recognize, payments to wedding vendors, deposits for services, purchases at bridal shops. Someone had been systematically using her identity to fund an elaborate wedding, and she hadn't noticed because she trusted her family to handle her mail while she worked long shifts at the hospital. That was going to stop today. Her mother answered the door with a bright smile. Andy, I'm so glad you're here. Courtney wants to show you the final flower arrangements, and we need to talk about the seating chart. We need to talk about the fraud, Andy said, stepping inside. The living room was transformed into wedding planning headquarters. Fabric samples covered every surface, vendor catalogs were stacked on the coffee table, and a large whiteboard displayed a timeline of wedding tasks. This wasn't the simple family gathering Courtney had described. This was a military-level operation. Courtney emerged from the kitchen with a cup of tea, beaming. Andy, perfect timing. I was just going over the menu with Mom. Did you know they can do individual beef Wellingtons for each guest? It's only $30 extra per plate. Stop. Andy pulled out the contract. We're going to talk about this right now. All of it. Her father looked up from his newspaper. What's the problem now? The problem is that you've all committed identity theft and fraud. Multiple felonies. And you're acting like I should thank you for it. Her mother waved her hand dismissively. You're making this sound much worse than it is. It's just family helping family. Family doesn't forge signatures on contracts that could bankrupt other family members. Bankrupt? Courtney laughed. Come on, Andy. You make good money. And it's not like you spend it on anything important anyway. You live in that tiny house, you drive that old car, you never go anywhere or buy anything nice. At least this way your money is going towards something meaningful. Andy stared at her sister. Something meaningful? You mean your party? It's not just a party. It's my wedding. The most important day of my life. And Robert's family will be there, judging everything. Do you want them to think we're poor? I don't care what Robert's family thinks. Well, you should. Robert could be a partner in his father's business someday. This wedding is an investment in our future. Your future. Not mine. And you're investing my money without my permission. Their father set down his newspaper with an annoyed sigh. Andy, you're being selfish. Your sister needs this wedding to make a good impression. It's not like you're getting married anytime soon. The casual cruelty of that statement hit Andy like a slap. So because I'm single, my financial security doesn't matter? That's not what he meant, her mother said quickly. It's just that you have the flexibility to help right now. When you get married someday, we'll all chip in to help you too. With whose money? After this wedding, I won't have any left. Courtney's expression hardened. You know what? I'm tired of pretending this is complicated. You owe me this wedding. I owe you. Yes. Do you remember who took care of Mom when she had her surgery 3 years ago? Me. Do you remember who planned Dad's surprise birthday party? Me. Do you remember who organized every family gathering, every holiday, every celebration? Me. While you were off playing nurse and making your big salary, I was here taking care of everyone else. I was working. To pay for my student loans and my house and my life. And now it's time to give back to the family that supported you. Andy looked around the room at the 3 people she'd loved and trusted her entire life. They were all staring at her with expectation, as if her objection to financial fraud was unreasonable and selfish. I supported myself, she said quietly. I put myself through nursing school. I bought my own house. I pay my own bills. When exactly did you support me? We supported you emotionally, her mother said. We believed in you. We encouraged you. That's worth something. It's worth $95,000? If that's what it takes for Courtney to have her dream wedding, then yes. Andy felt something cold settle in her chest. And what if I refuse to pay? The room went silent. Finally, her father spoke. Then you'll be letting down your whole family. And Courtney's wedding will be ruined. Is that really what you want? To be the person who destroyed your sister's happiness? I want to be the person who isn't financially destroyed by identity theft. Stop calling it that, Courtney snapped. It's not identity theft. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. We're not stealing. We're asking you to invest in something important. Something that will benefit all of us when Robert's family sees how well we can put together an event. Andy stood up, clutching the contract. I'm not paying for this wedding. Yes, you are, her mother said firmly. We've already made commitments to these vendors. People are counting on us. You can't just back out now. I never backed in. You forged my signature. The signature doesn't matter. What matters is family loyalty. And right now, you're showing us exactly how little your family means to you. Andy looked at each of them one more time. Her mother's disappointed expression. Her father's annoyance. Courtney's entitled anger. These people had stolen her identity, committed fraud in her name, and were now trying to guilt her into accepting financial ruin. I need time to think, she said. Don't think too long, Courtney warned. The final payment is due in 2 weeks. If you don't pay, we'll all look like fools. Andy walked to the door without another word. Behind her, she heard her mother's voice. She'll come around. She always does. She just needs time to get used to the idea. As Andy drove home, she realized her mother was wrong. She wasn't going to come around. She was going to fight back. And her family had no idea what they'd just started. Andy took 3 days off work, telling her supervisor she had a family emergency. It wasn't exactly a lie. She spent those days methodically uncovering the full scope of what her family had done to her. The wedding contract was just the beginning. They'd opened credit cards in her name using mail forwarding and fake employment verification. They'd used her social security number to establish vendor accounts. They'd even applied for a personal loan using her house as collateral, though thankfully that application had been denied due to her existing mortgage. Sitting at her kitchen table with printouts spread everywhere, Andy tallied up the damage. $95,000 for the venue and basic package. Another $20,000 in deposits already paid to various vendors. Credit card balances that hadn't existed a week ago totaling $15,000. They'd stolen over $130,000 from her future, and the wedding was still 6 weeks away. She called each vendor pretending to be a helpful family member confirming details. The florist alone was expecting $8,000 for centerpieces and bouquets. The photographer wanted $12,000 for an engagement shoot, wedding day coverage, and a custom album. The caterer was preparing a 7-course meal with imported ingredients for 200 guests. Just to confirm, Andy said to the wedding planner, everything is being paid for by Andy Collins, correct? That's right. She's such a generous sister. Not many people would pay for such an elaborate wedding for someone else. Courtney is very lucky. Yes, Andy said through gritted teeth. Very lucky. She hung up and called her bank. Her credit score had already dropped 50 points due to the new accounts and high balances. Her debt-to-income ratio was now high enough that she'd have trouble getting approved for anything in the future. They hadn't just stolen her money, they'd stolen her financial future. The most infuriating part was how organized it all was. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Someone had been planning this for months, carefully timing the fraud to maximize the damage while minimizing her ability to discover it before it was too late. Her phone buzzed with a text from Courtney. Did you call the caterer? They said someone was asking about payment details. Don't mess this up for me. Andy stared at the message. Even now, even knowing she'd been caught, Courtney was still trying to control the situation. Still acting like Andy owed her something. She decided to test just how far they were willing to go. She texted back. The caterer says there's a problem with the payment. We need to talk. Her phone rang immediately. What kind of problem? Courtney demanded. They want to verify that I actually agreed to pay for all this. Just tell them yes. Why are you making this complicated? Because I never agreed to pay for any of this. Because someone forged my signature. Because this is fraud. Andy, please. You're scaring me. The wedding is in 6 weeks. Everything is booked. If you back out now, I'll lose all the deposits and look like an idiot in front of Robert's family. You should have thought of that before you stole my identity. I didn't steal anything. I used your credit to secure the vendors. You can pay them back over time. It's not like you need the money right now anyway. I need my credit rating. I need my savings. I need my financial security. You need to stop being selfish and help your family. Andy hung up and immediately called a locksmith. If her family had been accessing her mail for months, they probably had copies of her house keys too. She wasn't taking any chances. While she waited for the locksmith, she logged into her online banking and changed every password. She enabled two-factor authentication on everything. She called her credit card companies and put fraud alerts on all her accounts. She requested new cards with different numbers. She even changed her address with the post office to a P.O. box she rented under a fake business name. The locksmith arrived just as her mother was calling again. Andy let it go to voicemail and watched through her window as he installed new deadbolts and changed all her locks. For the first time in days, she felt like she was taking control instead of just reacting. When he finished, she listened to her mother's voicemail. Andy, this is ridiculous. We're family. Family doesn't lock each other out over money. Call me back so we can work this out like adults. Courtney is crying, and you're ruining what should be the happiest time of her life. I expected better from you. Andy deleted the message and blocked all their numbers. She needed time to think without their constant pressure and manipulation. She needed time to plan her next move. Because now she understood something crucial. Her family had planned this attack on her finances, expecting her to simply accept it. They counted on her being too nice, too loyal, too guilty to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Andy sat in the law office of Peterson and Associates, a folder thick with evidence in her lap. She'd spent the previous week documenting everything, photographing the forged signatures, printing bank statements, collecting emails and text messages. She'd even recorded her phone conversations with vendors, discovering that her family had been impersonating her for months. This is extensive identity theft, attorney Rebecca Peterson said, flipping through the evidence. Your family has committed multiple felonies. Credit fraud, forgery, identity theft, and possibly wire fraud if they used electronic transfers. What are my options? Well, you could file criminal charges. With this much evidence, prosecutors would likely pursue the case aggressively. Identity theft over this amount is a serious crime. Andy considered this. Part of her wanted to see her family face consequences for what they'd done. But another part of her just wanted to be free of their manipulation without spending years in court battles. What other options do I have? You can dispute all the charges as fraud with your credit card companies and banks. You'll need to file police reports and fraud affidavits, but you won't be pressing charges. The financial institutions will investigate and likely remove all fraudulent debts from your credit. And my family? They'll be responsible for any money already spent, and vendors may pursue them for payment. If they can't pay, vendors might sue them or seek criminal charges themselves. Andy thought about Courtney crying over her ruined wedding plans. About her parents facing lawsuits from angry vendors. About the embarrassment in front of Robert's wealthy family. Then she thought about her own financial ruin, about years of struggling to pay for a party she never wanted, about her family's casual dismissal of her well-being. I want to dispute everything as fraud, she said. Are you sure? Once you start this process, there's no going back. Your family will face serious consequences. They should have thought of that before they stole from me. Attorney Peterson nodded approvingly. I'll also recommend that you consult with a financial advisor about protecting your remaining assets. If your family was willing to do this once, they might try again. She arranged for Andy to meet with a financial planner who specialized in fraud recovery. As Andy left the law office, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time since opening that contract, she felt like she had some control over the situation. The financial advisor, Patricia Chin, was even more helpful than the lawyer. She showed Andy how to freeze her credit, set up account monitoring, and protect her assets from future fraud attempts. Your family did significant damage, Patricia explained, but it's all reversible if you act quickly. The key is to be completely thorough in disputing everything and then take steps to prevent it from happening again. How long will it take? 3 to 6 months for your credit to be fully restored. But the good news is that once the fraud is officially documented, you won't be responsible for any of these debts. Andy felt a weight lift from her shoulders. And my family? They'll owe the money to the vendors and credit card companies. If they can't pay, there will be legal consequences. That afternoon, Andy spent 3 hours on the phone with credit card companies filing fraud disputes. Each representative was sympathetic and helpful once they saw the evidence. Several mentioned that family fraud was becoming more common and that she was smart to act quickly. By evening, she had filed reports with 3 different banks, 2 credit card companies, and the local police department. The police officer who took her report was particularly understanding. "Family fraud is tough," Officer Williams said. "People feel guilty about pressing charges, but what your family did isn't legal just because you're related. You're doing the right thing protecting yourself." "Will they arrest them?" "Depends on how they respond when the creditors come after them. If they pay back what they stole, it might stay a civil matter. If they can't pay or refuse to cooperate, the vendors might push for criminal charges." Andy drove home feeling emotionally drained but financially hopeful. She'd taken the first steps toward protecting herself. Now she needed to make sure her family couldn't do any more damage while the disputes were being processed. She changed her phone number and didn't give the new one to anyone in her family. She closed her old P.O. box and opened a new one across town. She even applied for a new job in another city, just in case she needed to disappear completely. Her family had counted on her loyalty and guilt to keep her trapped in their scheme. They'd assumed she would never take serious action against them because family always came first in her mind. But they'd pushed too far this time. And now they were going to discover that Andy Collins was stronger than they'd ever imagined. Andy's new phone rang at 6 in the morning. She'd only given the number to her supervisor at work, so she answered immediately, thinking there was an emergency at the hospital. "Andy?" It was her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "I hope it's okay that I called. I got your number from the hospital directory. Your family is at your house. They've been pounding on your door for 20 minutes. Andy looked out her hotel room window. She'd been staying at a hotel across town for 3 days, ever since she realized her family might escalate their pressure tactics. She'd been right. "Are they still there?" "Yes, and they're getting loud." "Should I call the police?" "Please do. Tell them I don't live there anymore and they're trespassing." Andy had spent the week systematically removing herself from her family's reach. She transferred all her money to new accounts at a different bank. She'd rented a storage unit and moved her most valuable possessions out of her house. She'd even arranged for her mail to be forwarded to yet another P.O. box that her family would never find. The financial planner had suggested these precautions, warning that desperate people sometimes became dangerous people when their plans fell apart. "The wedding vendors will start demanding payment soon," Patricia had explained. "When your family realizes they can't access your money and you won't voluntarily pay, they may try more aggressive tactics to force your compliance." Andy's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Courtney. I know you changed your number, but I found your new one. We need to talk. The caterer is threatening to cancel if they don't get payment by Friday." Instead of responding, Andy screenshotted the message and forwarded it to her lawyer. Then she blocked that number too. She spent the morning applying for jobs in other cities. Her nursing credentials were good in any state, and she'd been wanting a fresh start anyway. The fraud situation had shown her something important. Her life in this city was built around people who didn't actually care about her well-being. Her supervisor at the hospital had been incredibly supportive when Andy explained the situation. "Take all the time you need," Dr. Harrison had said. "Family fraud is traumatic. And don't worry about references, I'll make sure any future employer knows you're one of the best nurses we've ever had." By noon, Andy had 3 interview offers for positions in different states. All 3 were promotions with better pay than her current job. She scheduled the interviews for the following week, planning to make her decision and move within the month. Her temporary phone rang again. "Mrs. Rodriguez." "They're back," her neighbor reported. "This time they brought someone with them. A man in a suit." "Did you catch his name?" "Robert something. He looks angry." "Robert?" "Courtney's fiancé." Andy wondered if he knew about the fraud or if he genuinely believed she'd agreed to pay for his wedding. Either way, she didn't want to deal with any of them. "The police made them leave last time, right?" "Yes, but they said they'd be back." "Andy, what's going on?" "They keep saying you're trying to ruin Courtney's wedding. They forged my signature on contracts and stole over $100,000 from me." "I'm not ruining anything, I'm protecting myself." Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "Good for you, honey. I was wondering how a nurse could afford to pay for such an expensive wedding. It didn't make sense." That afternoon, Andy received an email from her lawyer. The fraud disputes were progressing quickly, and the credit card companies were already removing the charges from her accounts. Several vendors had contacted the law office asking about payment alternatives, and Peterson was referring them to Courtney and her parents. Your family is starting to panic, the email read. They've called my office 6 times today asking to speak with you. I've told them you're not taking calls, but they're insisting this is all a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. And the consequences were finally starting to catch up with the thieves. Andy spent the evening researching her new potential cities online. Portland looked promising: good hospitals, reasonable cost of living, no family connections to complicate her fresh start. She submitted her application to Oregon's nursing board for license transfer and booked a hotel for her interview trip. For the first time in weeks, she felt excited about the future instead of anxious about it. She was going to escape her family's toxic manipulation and build a life surrounded by people who actually respected her. Her family had assumed she would always be their safety net, always available to clean up their messes and fund their dreams. They'd counted on her loyalty and guilt to keep her trapped in their dysfunctional dynamic. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd shown her exactly how little they valued her. And now she was done valuing them. Andy was in Portland interviewing for her new job when the first frantic call came. She turned off her temporary phone, but her new employer's HR department mentioned that someone had been calling the hospital repeatedly, claiming to be her sister with a family emergency. I told them you were unavailable and offered to take a message, the HR director said. But she was quite insistent. She kept saying something about a wedding being ruined. Andy smiled. Thank you for not giving out my information. The wedding situation is exactly why I'm relocating. The interview went perfectly. The hospital offered her the position on the spot, a substantial pay increase, excellent benefits, and a signing bonus that would cover her moving expenses. She accepted immediately and asked to start in 2 weeks. That evening she finally turned on her phone to find 47 missed calls and 32 text messages from various numbers. The desperation in the messages was almost funny. From her mother: Andy, please call. The vendors are all asking for payment and we don't know what to tell them. From Courtney: my wedding is tomorrow and everything is falling apart. You need to fix this right now. From her father: this family emergency has gone too far. Stop being childish and pay for your sister's wedding. From Robert: I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're embarrassing my family. Handle your obligations. From unknown numbers that were probably relatives: family sticks together. Courtney doesn't deserve this. You're being cruel. Andy deleted all the messages without responding. She ordered room service and spent the evening researching apartments in Portland, feeling lighter and happier than she had in months. Meanwhile, according to the updates her lawyer sent via email, chaos was erupting back home. The venue had locked out the wedding party that morning when no payment arrived. The caterer had refused to deliver food. The florist had repossessed all the flowers. The photographer had canceled and was demanding payment for the engagement photos. Even the musicians had packed up and left when they weren't paid. Courtney's dream wedding had become a nightmare of angry vendors and empty rooms. Your family has been calling my office every hour, the lawyer's email continued. They're demanding we contact you immediately to resolve this misunderstanding. I've explained repeatedly that fraud is not a misunderstanding, but they don't seem to understand the legal reality of their situation. The email included photos from the wedding venue that someone had posted on social media. Empty chairs, bare tables, and Courtney in an expensive dress standing in a room meant for 200 people with only immediate family present. Robert looked furious in every photo. But what made Andy feel genuinely satisfied was a quote from Robert's mother in the social media comments. I've never seen such poor planning. The family claimed they had everything handled, but clearly they were living beyond their means. Very disappointing. So much for impressing Robert's wealthy family. Andy's phone rang again, another unknown number. This time she answered. Andy, this is Robert. We need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. You've humiliated my family and destroyed my wedding day. You owe Courtney and me an explanation. I don't owe you anything. But you and Courtney owe me an explanation for stealing my identity and committing fraud. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. And now you're facing the consequences. Look, I didn't know about any of this until today. Courtney told me you had agreed to pay for everything. If there was some miscommunication. There was no miscommunication. There was fraud. And if you weren't part of it, then you should be angry with Courtney, not me. I am angry with Courtney. But I'm also angry with you for handling this so badly. You could have talked to us privately instead of destroying everything publicly. I tried talking to you. Your response was to call me selfish and ungrateful. We can fix this. We can work out a payment plan. You don't have to pay everything at once. Robert listened carefully. I am not paying for any wedding expenses because I never agreed to any wedding expenses. Someone forged my signature and stole my identity. That's a crime. And I'm not fixing crimes committed against me. But what am I supposed to tell my family? They think your family is either broke or dishonest. Tell them the truth. Courtney committed fraud and got caught. I can't tell them that. Do you know what that would do to my reputation? My father's business relationships. And he almost laughed. Even now, facing the ruins of his wedding day, Robert was still worried about appearances rather than the actual crimes that had been committed. Your reputation is not my problem, she said and hung up. She turned off her phone again and went to bed, sleeping better than she had in weeks. The next morning brought another email update from her lawyer. The wedding disaster had made local news. Local wedding canceled due to financial fraud, was the headline, and the article detailed how an elaborate wedding had collapsed when the person supposedly paying for it disputed all charges as identity theft. The bride's sister, a local nurse, claims her family forged her signature on over $100,000 in vendor contracts without her knowledge or consent, the article read. Police confirmed that fraud reports have been filed and investigations are ongoing. Courtney had been interviewed for the article, and her quotes were telling. My sister is just jealous that I'm getting married and she's still single. She agreed to help pay for the wedding and then changed her mind at the last minute to hurt me. Even facing public humiliation and potential criminal charges, Courtney was still lying about what had happened. She genuinely seemed to believe that committing fraud was acceptable as long as it served her purposes. But the vendors weren't buying her story. According to the lawyer's email, 3 companies had already filed civil suits against Courtney and her parents for payment. 2 others were considering criminal charges for the fraudulent contracts. Your family's legal troubles are just beginning, the lawyer wrote. But your credit is almost completely cleared. You should be able to start fresh in your new city without any of this affecting your financial future. Andy packed her suitcase and prepared to fly home to collect her remaining belongings and finalize her move. She had 1 more week to get out of town before her new job started, and she intended to use every day of it. Her family had gambled that she would rather pay for their mistakes than face the social consequences of fighting back. They'd assumed she cared more about their reputation than her own well-being. They'd lost that bet spectacularly. Andy returned home to find her house surrounded by news vans. The wedding fraud story had gained traction on social media, with people expressing outrage that a family would steal from their own member to fund a lavish party. She parked in the alley behind her house and snuck in through the back door. Her phone had died during the flight, but when she plugged it in, it immediately started buzzing with notifications. Hundreds of friend requests on social media, dozens of interview requests from reporters, and messages of support from complete strangers who had seen the news story. But mixed in with the support were angry messages from extended family members and family friends who blamed her for embarrassing the family publicly. From her aunt, I can't believe you would air family business in the newspapers. We handle things privately. From a family friend, Courtney is devastated. How could you ruin her wedding over money? From a cousin, everyone is talking about our family like we're criminals. Thanks a lot. Andy shook her head. Even now, even with proof of fraud and identity theft, some people still thought she was the villain for refusing to be stolen from quietly. She spent the day packing while monitoring the news coverage. The story had spread beyond local media. A national news program had picked it up as an example of family financial abuse, and several financial experts were using it to discuss the growing problem of relative-perpetrated fraud. This case illustrates why family members are often the most dangerous identity thieves, one expert explained on television. Victims trust them with personal information and often feel too guilty to report the crimes promptly. Her lawyer called around noon with an update. The police interviewed your family yesterday, Attorney Peterson reported. They're all claiming this was a misunderstanding and that you had verbally agreed to pay for the wedding. Do the police believe that? Not with your evidence. Verbal agreements don't justify forging signatures on contracts. And the pattern of behavior opening credit cards, accessing your mail, using your information repeatedly over months that shows clear intent to defraud. What happens next? The district attorney is reviewing the case for potential criminal charges. Even if they don't prosecute, the civil suits are moving forward. Your family is looking at significant financial liability. That afternoon, Andy had an unexpected visitor. Robert appeared at her front door, looking haggard and desperate. Please, he said when she answered. Just 5 minutes. I need to understand what happened. Against her better judgment, Andy let him in. He looked around at the packed boxes and moving supplies. You're really leaving? Yes. I got a job in Portland. I start next week. Because of this wedding thing? Because of this fraud thing. And because I realized my family doesn't actually care about me as a person. Robert sat down heavily on her couch. I had no idea about any of it. Courtney told me you were excited to help pay for a nice wedding. She said you made good money and didn't have anyone else to spend it on. And that didn't sound strange to you? That someone would voluntarily pay $100,000 for someone else's party? Rich people do stuff like that for family all the time. My parents paid for my sister's wedding. I thought maybe your family was wealthier than they seemed. Andy studied his face. He seemed genuinely confused and hurt, not manipulative like her family had been. Robert, your parents paid for your sister's wedding because they chose to and could afford it. They didn't forge someone else's signature and steal their identity. I know that now. But at the time, everything Courtney said seemed reasonable. She showed me contracts with your signature, talked about how excited you were about the plans, mentioned conversations you'd supposedly had about specific details. She's a good liar. Yeah, I'm starting to realize that. He ran his hands through his hair. My parents are furious. They think I married into a family of criminals. My dad is talking about making me choose between Courtney and my inheritance. Did you marry her? After everything that happened? We had a quick ceremony at the courthouse the next day. Just immediate family. But it wasn't what either of us had planned. Andy felt a flicker of sympathy for him. He'd been manipulated too, just in a different way. What are you going to do? I don't know. Courtney keeps saying this is all your fault for not helping family when they needed you. But I've been thinking about it, and even if you had agreed originally, backing out when you saw the final cost would have been reasonable. Nobody should have to go bankrupt for someone else's party. No, they shouldn't. She doesn't see it that way. She thinks family should sacrifice anything for each other. But only sacrifice to benefit her, if you know what I mean. Andy nodded. That's always been Courtney's attitude. Everything revolves around what she wants. My family is nothing like that. We help each other, but we don't demand help. And we certainly don't steal from each other. He looked up at her. I think I made a mistake marrying her. That's something you'll have to figure out yourself. Robert stood to leave. I'm sorry about everything. And I hope your new job works out well. Thank you. After he left, Andy realized that conversation had given her something she hadn't expected: closure. Not everyone in her family's orbit was terrible. Some people, like Robert, had just been caught up in Courtney's manipulation without fully understanding what was happening. But that didn't change anything about her own situation. She was still leaving, still starting fresh, still done with her family's toxic dynamics. The moving truck would arrive tomorrow, and by the end of the week she'd be in Portland beginning a new life. A life where she could trust the people around her and where her success benefited herself instead of funding other people's dreams. Her family had taught her an important lesson. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Portland welcomed Andy with clear skies and the promise of possibilities she'd never imagined. Her new apartment was small but bright, with big windows overlooking a park where people walked dogs and children played. For the first time in years she felt like she could breathe freely. Her new job at Portland General Hospital was everything she'd hoped for and more. The staff was professional and supportive, the facilities were state-of-the-art, and her supervisor, Dr. Martinez, appreciated her experience and skills immediately. We're lucky to have you, Dr. Martinez said during Andy's first week. Your references from back home were outstanding. They said you were one of the best nurses they'd ever worked with. Andy smiled, grateful that her professional reputation had remained untainted by her family's drama. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. She threw herself into work and exploration of her new city. Portland had an energy that her hometown had lacked. People seemed more genuine, more focused on substance than appearances. Her colleagues invited her to join them for coffee, weekend hikes, and local festivals. For the first time in years, she was making friends based on shared interests rather than family obligations. 3 weeks into her new life, she received an unexpected email from Mrs. Rodriguez, her former neighbor. Dear Andy, it read, I hope you're settling in well in Portland. I wanted to update you on the situation here. Your parents put their house up for sale last week. I think the legal bills are getting expensive. Courtney and Robert are living with your parents now, and from what I can see, it's not going well. There's a lot of yelling coming from that house. The local news did a follow-up story about family fraud, and several other people came forward with similar experiences. Apparently your case has helped other victims find the courage to report their own family members for financial abuse. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Not many people would have had the strength to do what you did. Andy read the email twice, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of her felt vindicated her family was finally facing real consequences for their actions. But another part of her felt sad that it had come to this. Still, she didn't regret her decisions. They had made their choices and she had made hers. Her new life continued to improve daily. She joined a hiking club and was learning to rock climb. She'd started taking cooking classes and discovered she had a talent for making pasta from scratch. She'd even begun dating, nothing serious yet, but she was meeting people who treated her with respect and genuine interest. One evening, while having dinner with her hiking group, someone asked her why she'd moved to Portland. "Fresh start," Andy said simply. "Sometimes you have to leave everything behind to find out who you really are." "That's brave," said Lauren, a teacher who had become a close friend. "Most people are too scared to start over completely." "I was scared too. But staying scared was worse than taking the risk." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, her stomach clenched, thinking her family had tracked down her new contact information. But the message was from Robert. "Hi Andy. I hope it's okay that I'm contacting you. I got your number from the hospital in case of emergency. I wanted you to know that I filed for divorce from Courtney last week. You were right about her and I should have seen it sooner. I hope you're doing well in Portland." Andy stared at the message. She wasn't surprised Robert had seemed like a decent person caught up in Courtney's manipulation. But she was surprised that he'd reached out to tell her. She typed back, "I'm sorry your marriage didn't work out, but you deserve someone who values honesty. Take care of yourself." She put her phone away and returned to her dinner conversation. Her hiking group was planning a weekend trip to Mount Hood, and everyone was excited about the challenge. These people were excited about adventures and achievements, not about scamming money from each other for parties. This was the life she deserved. This was what healthy relationships looked like. That night, as she sat on her small balcony watching the sunset over the mountains, Andy reflected on how much her life had changed in just 2 months. She'd gone from being trapped in a toxic family dynamic to being surrounded by people who celebrated her success instead of trying to exploit it. She'd gone from having her identity stolen to building an identity based on her own choices and values. She'd gone from being taken advantage of to being respected and appreciated. The cost had been high, losing her family, leaving her hometown, starting completely over. But the reward had been higher, finding out who she really was when she wasn't constantly putting everyone else's needs before her own. Her family had assumed she would always be available to clean up their messes and fund their dreams. They'd counted on her loyalty and guilt to keep her trapped in their dysfunction. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd shown her exactly what her life could be like if she chose herself first for once. And now she was never going back. 6 months after Andy left for Portland, she received a certified letter from her lawyer back home. She almost didn't open it, having finally reached a place where she rarely thought about her family or the wedding disaster. But curiosity won and she was glad it did. "Dear Miss Collins," the letter began, "I wanted to update you on the final resolution of your identity theft case. The district attorney has decided to prosecute your family members for fraud and identity theft. Your sister Courtney has been sentenced to 18 months probation and ordered to pay restitution of $47,000 to the vendors who were defrauded. Your parents received smaller fines and community service, as their involvement was deemed less extensive. Additionally, all civil suits against your family have been settled. They have been ordered to pay damages totaling $89,000 to various vendors and businesses. Your sister's marriage to Robert Patterson was dissolved 4 months ago, and she has filed for bankruptcy. Your credit has been fully restored, and there are no remaining financial obligations related to this matter. The case has also been used as a precedent in 3 other family fraud cases in our state. Congratulations on your successful recovery from this difficult situation." Andy set the letter down and looked out her apartment window at the Portland skyline. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, no anger. Just a quiet sense that justice had been served and she could close this chapter of her life completely. Her phone rang. It was Lauren from her hiking group. "Hey, are you free for dinner tonight? There's this new Ethiopian place I want to try." "Absolutely. I just got some good news and feel like celebrating." "Oh? What kind of good news?" "The kind that means I can stop looking over my shoulder and worrying about the past." That evening, over dinner with friends who had become her chosen family, Andy shared the update about her legal case. Everyone was supportive and celebratory, but what struck her most was their genuine surprise at how badly her biological family had treated her. "I can't imagine doing that to my sister," said Jake, a nurse from her unit. Even if I was desperate for money, stealing from family would never cross my mind. Same, agreed Lauren. My family has had financial struggles, but we help each other willingly or we don't help at all. We certainly don't commit crimes against each other. Andy realized that her new friend's reactions confirmed what she'd suspected but hadn't been sure about. Her family's behavior hadn't been normal family drama. It had been abuse, pure and simple. And she'd been right to escape it. The conversation moved on to other topics: weekend hiking plans, a new restaurant opening in the neighborhood, Jake's upcoming promotion. Normal, healthy conversations about positive things happening in their lives. Later that week, Andy received a LinkedIn message from a woman named Brenda Taylor. "Hi Andy," the message read. "I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I saw your story in the news last year about family financial fraud, and I wanted to thank you. After seeing how you handled your situation, I found the courage to report my own brother for stealing my identity to buy a car. The case was just resolved and I got my credit cleared. Your example helped me realize that family loyalty doesn't mean accepting abuse. Thank you for being brave enough to go first." Andy stared at the message, feeling overwhelmed with unexpected emotion. Her decision to fight back hadn't just saved her own life, it had helped other people find the strength to protect themselves too. She typed back, "I'm so glad you were able to resolve your situation. You're braver than you think. Family should lift us up, not tear us down. I hope you're doing well now." Over the following months, Andy received several more messages from people who had seen her story and been inspired to take action in their own situations. Some were dealing with family financial abuse, others with different types of manipulation and exploitation. All of them expressed gratitude that someone had publicly stood up to family dysfunction and shown that it was possible to choose self-respect over family loyalty. By her first anniversary in Portland, Andy had been promoted to charge nurse, had completed her first marathon, learned to speak conversational Spanish, and was in a healthy relationship with a kind man named Thomas who worked as a park ranger. Her life was full of genuine accomplishments and authentic relationships. She celebrated her one-year Portland anniversary with a dinner party at her apartment. 12 friends gathered around her table: colleagues, hiking buddies, neighbors, and Thomas. As she looked around at their faces, all genuinely happy to be there and celebrate her success, she realized this was what family was supposed to feel like. "A toast," said Dr. Martinez, raising his wine glass, "to Andy, who had the courage to start over and build the life she deserved." "To Andy," everyone chorused, and she felt tears prick her eyes. Not tears of sadness but tears of gratitude. Gratitude that she'd found the strength to walk away from people who didn't value her. Gratitude that she'd discovered what healthy relationships actually looked like. Gratitude that she'd chosen herself when it mattered most. Her biological family had taught her what she didn't want in life. Her chosen family was showing her everything she did want. And for the first time in years she had both. 2 years after leaving her hometown, Andy stood on the deck of her new house in Portland's hills, watching the sunset paint Mount Hood pink and gold. The house was modest but perfect: 3 bedrooms, a garden where she was learning to grow vegetables, and a view that never failed to make her smile. Thomas emerged from the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee, handing her one as he settled beside her on the porch swing they'd installed the previous weekend. "Good day at work?" he asked. "Great day. We got approval for the new pediatric wing expansion, and I'm going to lead the nursing staff selection committee." "That's amazing. Congratulations." Andy smiled, still sometimes surprised by how naturally Thomas celebrated her successes. In her old life, accomplishments had been met with jealousy or expectations that she should use her success to benefit others. With Thomas, achievements were simply acknowledged and celebrated. Her phone buzzed with a notification: a friend request on social media from someone named Robert Patterson. She stared at the name for a moment before accepting it. A message appeared immediately. "Hi Andy. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out because I owe you an apology. After our divorce, I learned a lot more about what Courtney had done to you and how she'd manipulated me into believing her version of events. You tried to warn me about who she really was and I should have listened. I hope you can forgive me for being part of the pressure you faced during that awful time." Andy showed the message to Thomas, who read it with interest. "Are you going to respond?" he asked. "I think so. He was a victim too, in a way. Just not the same kind of victim I was." She typed back, "Thank you for the apology, Robert. I hope you're in a better place now and have learned to recognize manipulation tactics. Everyone deserves honest relationships." His response came quickly, "I am, thanks to some good therapy. I'm actually engaged to someone wonderful now, someone who would never ask me to participate in hurting other people. I should have seen the red flags with Courtney, but I'm grateful I learned the lesson before it was too late. I hope you're happy and successful wherever you are." "Very happy and very successful," she replied. "Take care." She put her phone away and leaned against Thomas's shoulder, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Even her family's victims were finding their way to healthier lives. "You know what I realized today?" she said. "What's that?" "I haven't thought about my family in weeks. Not with anger or hurt or even curiosity. They're just not part of my life anymore." "How does that feel?" "Free. Like I finally stopped carrying around a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying." That weekend, Andy and Thomas hosted a barbecue for their friend group. 20 people filled their backyard, laughing and sharing stories and planning future adventures together. Dr. Martinez brought his family. Lauren came with her new boyfriend. Jake announced his engagement to his longtime partner. Everyone celebrated everyone else's good news without jealousy or expectation. As Andy watched her friends interact, she marveled at how different these relationships were from what she'd grown up thinking was normal. These people supported each other without keeping score. They celebrated successes without resentment. They offered help without expecting payback. This was what healthy family looked like. "Speech," someone called out, and the group turned to Andy expectantly. She laughed, raising her beer bottle. "I don't have a speech prepared, but I do want to say something. 3 years ago, I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it led me to all of you. To this community, this life, this happiness. So thank you for showing me what real family looks like." "To chosen family," Lauren called out, and everyone cheered. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and they'd finished cleaning up, Andy and Thomas sat on their deck under the stars. "Any regrets?" he asked. Andy considered the question seriously. Did she regret losing her biological family? Did she regret the pain and upheaval of starting over? Did she regret the legal battles and public embarrassment? "No," she said finally. "I regret that it took me so long to realize I deserved better. But I don't regret anything I did to get better." "Good. Because you deserve all of this and more." Andy smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From opening that wedding contract to sitting on her own deck with someone who truly loved her, she had traveled further than miles could measure. Her family had tried to use her success to fund their fantasies, not caring if it destroyed her life in the process. They'd counted on her guilt and loyalty to keep her trapped in their dysfunction. But they'd miscalculated completely. Instead of destroying her, their betrayal had freed her to discover who she really was and what she actually wanted. She'd wanted respect and she'd found it. She'd wanted genuine relationships and she'd built them. She'd wanted a life where her success benefited her own future, and she'd created it. Her family had taught her that some people would always see her as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. But Portland had taught her that there were plenty of people in the world who could love her without trying to use her. And that made all the difference. As she looked out over the city lights below, Andy Collins felt something she'd never experienced before: complete satisfaction with the life she'd built. Not perfect, but genuinely hers. Not easy, but authentically chosen. Her family had signed a contract in her name, believing they could force her to pay for their mistakes. Instead, they'd given her the freedom to write her own life story. And it was a story with a very happy ending.